Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, I'm joined by my good sis Courtney, aka None of My Friends Watch Anime. We are doing a deep dive into episode 4 of Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. This was my personal favorite episode. I absolutely love that we got to see how everything transpired up until this point in the series, specifically from King George's perspective. I love when series do this, when they focus on just one character for an entire episode, because it really helps us to actually see our other characters from a different vantage point beyond our own. So I absolutely loved what this series as a whole, but especially this episode, taught us about mental health and how far the practice of mental health has come, and that our relationship to it still has a ways to go. But I was in love with this episode, so stay tuned. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. And if you like what you saw and want to support our platform, join our Patreon. The link is in the episode description. And I will see you guys soon for episode 5. Bye.
Episode 4 ruined me.
So this is where so I don't know how much time we're gonna do this, but this is where I really got into notes.
Let's
for
go
real.
through it. Let's go through
because
it.
Episode 4, 5, and 6 were really.
I really love when a series gives us an episode of just one person's perspective, or we do a deep dive on a single character. I really, really dig that. This made me think a lot about myself, of where you have had to tell me 100,000 times, Jess, I don't think this is about you. I don't think this person is this way because of you. This isn't about you. And intellectually, we might know that, right? But to see it played out where Charlotte kept feeling like she was a failure, she did something wrong, she did it. I was like,
she was undesirable.
She was undesirable. I was like, I'm connecting with this entirely too much, and it just made me so curious of the men in my life, the times where I felt disappointed, undesired, I haven't been enough. What was their internal struggle? I really appreciate that. And sometimes, let's be clear, sometimes niggas just be on some fuck shit. But sometimes, and we've talked about this as well, of when it comes to the social media dating advice, right? Of how it doesn't take into consideration the nuance or the context of actual relationships. They're just not that straightforward. If you
want humanity.
If he wanted
people
to,
are people.
Would. People love to say if he wanted.
Maybe he can't. Maybe he actually cannot. Right. And multiple things can be true, right? I do think that, if someone desires to do something, that they would do it. And maybe that's because I'm someone that roots everything in pleasure. And if I want to do it, I'm going to. But I also feel I think I've told you this, I want to take my friends on shopping trips in Europe. Can I? No. You know what I mean? So that doesn't mean that I want to, but I can't. So it's there's certain things I think that come into consideration. And I feel I'm glad that we got to see George's perspective of him wanting to be with her, him wanting to
protect her,
protect her, love her, him being so in love with her that he's battling himself and willing to put himself through complete bullshit.
Literal
to
torture.
Protect her.
Literal torture.
Can we talk about the doctor?
And also feeling like he wasn't worthy, of feeling like he was inferior. And the doctor on the front side, because he basically, we start back from the day, the week, whatever, that Charlotte is going to come, right? And he's in front of the Council of Thin-Lipped Men and his mother, and he breaks. And it's damn it, we got this wedding is a week away. We got to figure something out. And on the front end, this doctor is this is an issue of nerves and a mental thing. And we just need to talk to him. And I think
he got me. Because when he said, he was he just needs the right voice. And I said, he's so right. And then he calmed him down immediately. He's I'm not going to put him through the torture chambers like you guys have. I'm not going to do those things, honey, and got 10 times worse. Terrible.
And it
So
made
I
me
didn't know if you were gonna break down, like, I know you've been breaking down each episode before we talk about it. So if I cut you off, I'm so sorry.
no, that was it. Like
Okay.
this
Okay.
episode is just like we see everything up to this point unfold, but from
Mm.
George's
George's
vantage point, and
perspective.
we get
Right.
more insight into his condition, into what it's like healthcare period was just so in its infancy, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, especially when you have a mental issue, there's still to this day a stigma attached to it as if there's something morally wrong with
Girl.
you for having like a chemical imbalance. Like, how is that my fault? You know?
Yeah. Right.
Um, and it made me think about like in the 50s, how like housewives would be institutionalized and getting lobotomized and all of these horrific ways that they would come
Mhm.
up with to treat these mental conditions, but a lot of it was actually just torture. And at some point,
Yeah.
these scientists knew that this was just torture. And you felt
Yeah.
okay torturing these people because you felt like they were
It's a
bad people.
power.
It
Yeah,
was
and
power.
it was a thing of power because you could see that in the doctor. Like he was very much like, you've only known privilege. I'm gonna break you. Right. And I think he got a sense, I think, his dick got hard by the fact that he thought that he could break the king, right? Like the most powerful man in the world. And I did love how George would stand up to him in those moments where I don't remember which episode it was, but he was like shaving him and he like got too close to his neck and George was took the knife from him and like started shaving himself and was just like, hey, yo, look, like we're not gonna do this. You're dismissed. Right. So I do feel like I liked that. And to speaking of like standing up, I like the way Charlotte stands up to George as well, even though he's the king. So like he's her husband, yes, but the fact that she's a Black woman standing up to the most powerful man in the world at this point, and that goes back to Lady Danbury's point with her. Like, do you not understand your position in the world? Like, what is it about Charlotte? And I think that that's great. But again, is it from because of where she's from, or like what makes her feel like she can be so empowered?
She
I
had a
wonder.
secure base.
Yeah.
She had a brother, a family, a home that
Hmm.
affirmed her as
Yeah.
as a whole person.
Right.
When you have a secure base, when you have parents that
Yeah.
stand in the gap for you, that provide
Right.
a safe space for you, you go into the world with a
True.
certain amount of confidence.
Yeah. True.
And I think, with her being someone who was well read and who was
Mm.
indulged,
Hmm.
right? In ways
I think that's another reason why they were staring at her eating, because remember she was reading at the table. You know what I mean? Like, but she's lonely. It's like, what else am I supposed to do? I have to have a book. So it's like, what am I supposed to do? So yeah, you're right. And I think the fact that she even like stands, or there was a moment where the doctor said that he was her doctor.
that's towards the
When
end.
did that happen?
Okay, so towards the end, the doctor, so George comes in the kitchen because
Right, right,
again,
right.
George is on this high. This is the
Of
part
her.
where George feels like he's better. And here's the
Mm-hmm.
thing too about mental health treatment. It's such a tricky thing to figure out your specific cocktail of what makes you
Mm-hmm.
well from
Right.
from a medication perspective, but also from like a daily habits perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a
Yeah.
lifelong commitment, right? And so
Right.
you start feeling good, so you think you don't need it anymore. You start feeling bad, so you go back to it and it's still
Yeah.
not working, so you quit it again, right?
Right.
It's this up and down, back and forth of trying to figure out like the right measure of everything, right?
Yeah.
And so he's on a high of feeling like this is the part where they had the really good night at the ball. And he felt like
Yeah.
he didn't need the doctor anymore. So he's just like, I'm good on you. Like I have my wife, I'm good. And he comes in the kitchen to like, peruse, I
Have
guess,
a nosh.
whatever, have a little nosh, because bitch, we love a savory nosh. And
A treat.
and the doctor is making a poultice, and he's just like, you stay the fuck away from her, because I know you
What
don't
are you
think you have to
doing?
your wife do to my wife,
Right,
which you do
right.
to
What you
me.
did to me.
And
So that was another thing too, is that you realize what he's doing to you is wrong, but you're still gonna go ahead and do it because you think it's gonna help you.
and the
That
lack of
poor dear.
responsibility for him as a physician to be the one to tell that she's pregnant. That's
Yeah.
what triggered the dissociative episode. that night
Right.
with her, was
Yeah.
being told that,
That
and
she's pregnant. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So that was, I think I have that in my notes too. Like, was it his anxiety that triggered his episodes then?
That's what I think. Now, I feel like I read that IRL, this condition is like a hereditary one that actually starts in the gut and leads to these like hallucinations and these
Oh
like,
wow.
yeah, like panic and anxiety. I think I
Mm.
read that's what I want to say that I read, but don't quote me. But
Mhm.
I also like that we see Charlotte go and confront Augusta about like why he ain't tell
Why you
me.
ain't tell me
And
about this man?
but for him to overhear it, like it's the morning after,
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
thinking that he has a safe space with her, and she goes to his mom
His
to talk about
mom.
this. And the part where she says she wondered why all the knives were blunted, and have
Yeah, that morning when she came back,
and she was like, have
the
you ever
windows were
yeah,
shut.
tried to
Yeah.
cut meat with a, and we did see that scene. They
Mhm.
showed her cut it, and which just made me want a lamb chop.
Wait, which scene was it?
So this
Oh
is what
yeah,
I'm
she couldn't.
talking
Oh
about. She
yeah.
was like, and I was like, why
I
they?
didn't even pay attention to that.
It was one of the scenes where they were like everyone's paying attention to how she eats, and it
Yeah.
just made me, it was like, oh, that's interesting. Like she's like struggling to cut this meat. I thought it was like out of frustration, but it was a clue that like they
Right.
were all around her preparing this house for whatever his
If
madness
he
would lead
came.
him to do,
Mhm.
right? And he
I
overheard
didn't even put that
it.
together.
Yeah,
I did not even. I thought she just had a hard time cutting that meat. Oh, see, I love a good rewatch because then you catch stuff like that.
exactly.
But then I was like, I did say I love that I see more George. And I also think that it's interesting that he's unamused by her being a black woman. Did you not find that interesting?
I feel like that was so intentional.
Really?
I feel like that was intentional on Shonda's part because the series opens with Lady Whistledown being like, "Dearest readers, don't come over here with that fuck shit. This is not historical, factual. This ain't a documentary.
Yeah, true, true,
Historical
true, true, true.
fiction."
Right, right, right,
And so I
right.
think that that was a really intentional thing of like, don't make her exotic.
I like that because I like that because it doesn't, he's not looking at her like, everyone else.
Yeah,
Like
she's
he doesn't
not
say
other.
anything about, yeah, like he doesn't say anything about her being a black woman. And
Yeah,
I find that absolutely interesting. Because obviously like everybody else talks about it, like with the Duke, right?
yeah.
So I thought that was interesting too. And then the my favorite line was, she's almost as mad as I am. A woman like that is too dangerous for a man like me, when he's talking to Reynolds. And then Reynolds was like, or maybe the perfect match. And then he was like, oh, you think? Right? And he was like, oh, you need to spend more time with her. And then I'm like, not this nigga spying on her in his own house.
When she was playing chess by herself.
I was cracking up. I was like, yo, how you gonna be spying on your own wife? But I thought it was really sweet that he even just wanted to be near her, right? Like, I just want to see her. I just want to know what's going on. And knowing that he has this madness that won't allow him to be next to her. I thought that
Yeah.
that was really dope. Yeah.
Yeah. The distance as a means to protect, right?
Yeah.
But
So
not
cute.
knowing the stories that we tell ourselves to fill in the gaps when
Mm-hmm.
we don't have all the information, and what
Right.
it's like for the other person to try to figure out, like, why are you not here with me? The episode 4 was
It was good. And then the dog, first of all, like the dog had so many metaphors, like being a purebred dog, being rare, and then
descended from
saying like we will,
wolves.
right, like we will not be caged forever, like that kind of thing. I love the symbolism with them. Also, why is he so fine? I just couldn't figure out, like, apparently I need a farmer. Like, what is going on?
And here's what I watched. So apparently he was in Sandman. Which I watched. I still haven't
Hmm.
figured out who he was in Sandman. And I think it's another one of those things of it's the role. This role makes him really fun. Like we love Kit Harington as Jon Snow, but is Kit Harington hot as anyone else?
And he's also small in person. And so I learned that they put a lot of like the big furs, the big like armor on him because he's not really like a muscular
Yeah,
person. He's
he's
not
not
like
as strong as a man.
yeah, he's not like what's his name that's in that new show on Prime? The other one that's in it?
Richard Madden.
The Stark. Mm-hmm.
Rob Stark, who I maintain was the worst start, got everybody killed.
Terrible.
He wanted to go
Terrible.
after. You know what? I'm not.
100.
Not today.
We won't get into it, not
Not
today.
today.
But all
You know
all
my
that to
feelings.
say, right? All that to say, I do think that like he's just so fine in this role. But Reynolds, again, loving Reynolds, putting his hand on George's shoulder before he had a fit.
Let's talk about it for a second. I want to talk about hands. I want to talk about
Mm,
tactile
mm,
affirmation. The scene where Charlotte is in a state like she's never been before, and I think that this is actually the next episode. And
mhm.
Brimsley puts his hand out,
Yes.
knowing he can.
Oh,
Courtney, Courtney,
that really hurt me. That really hurt
Courtney,
me. Yeah.
that took something out of me. I was like, I said
It
no.
is the next episode because I watched it last night and almost cried. I did cry actually on that part. But it was just like all those little intimate moments of just again wanting to be there for someone. Because even like and I think I put this later on, even looking at like Reynolds' perspective on things and like the pressure that he was feeling too, right? And he couldn't even tell Brimsley about what was going on. And it was like he also was having to deal with someone that he can't help or protect. Like he physically wanted to protect this man, physically wanted to do something, and he couldn't. He was powerless because this is the king. And if the king is telling them that this is cool, I mean, who am I to do anything about that?
That's it. There's so many exchanges of power.
Yeah.
There's so much where it's like, okay, but ultimately, I set the rules here. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
I'm the queen, babe. However,
You still ain't me though. And I mean, at a higher ground than the princess of Lady Stark, but still, because like her constantly having to remind her, I'm the queen, right? Like you picked well, you chose me well
and
because
that,
I am
you know what I
that
mean?
bitch.
You need
Yeah.
to bear in mind that I'm not some simpering girl. I actually am the queen and I do outrule you. So keep it the
Right.
fuck cute.
Right. Right.
So that rolls us over into episode 5.